Thomas Edison invented the phonograph in 1877, but hearing his own recorded voice for the first time actually horrified him. You probably despise your own recorded voice too, and today we are uncovering the biological lie that makes you hate it. You might think your phone microphone just sucks, or that the audio is low quality, but the truth is much weirder than a bad recording. To understand why you cringe when you hear yourself, we have to look at how sound actually travels into your brain. When you speak, you are hearing two completely different versions of your voice at the exact same time. The first version travels through the air. Sound waves leave your mouth, bounce around the room, and eventually travel into your ear canal to vibrate your eardrum. This is called air conduction, and it is how you hear every other sound in the world. But your voice is entirely unique because the source is located inside your own head. As your vocal cords vibrate, those tremors do not just exit your mouth. They travel backward, shaking the actual bones of your skull. This is called bone conduction, and it creates a biological acoustic chamber that fundamentally alters how you hear your words. Think of your skull as a customized, built-in subwoofer that you carry around everywhere. Bone is much denser than air, and liquids, like the fluids inside your inner ear, transmit low-frequency sounds incredibly well while filtering out the higher pitches. When you speak, the vibrations from your vocal cords reverberate through your jawbone, your facial structure, and the fluid-filled cavities of your head before they finally reach your cochlea. Because of this dense biological filter, the higher frequencies of your voice are dampened, and the bass is naturally boosted. The result is that the voice you hear inside your head sounds deeper, richer, and far more resonant than the voice that actually leaves your mouth. You have literally spent your entire life listening to a beautifully mixed, bass-boosted, studio-quality version of your own voice that is entirely generated by the physical density of your skull. It is a biological acoustic illusion. You are essentially wearing a pair of high-end noise-cancelling headphones that only play a highly flattering cover version of your own speech. This bone-conducted audio blends perfectly with the air-conducted audio, creating a singular, smooth voice that you instantly recognize as your own. But it is a voice that absolutely no one else on the planet has ever heard. For the vast majority of human history, nobody knew this acoustic illusion even existed. Before the invention of audio recording, it was physically impossible to hear your own voice the way others heard it. On April 9th, 1860, an inventor named Edward Leon Scott de Martinville managed to record himself singing onto soot-covered paper using a device called a phonautograph. But he had absolutely no way to play it back. His voice remained silently trapped in that soot for 148 years. It was not until 17 years later, on December 6, 1877, that Thomas Edison finally cracked the code. He successfully tested his tinfoil cylinder phonograph in his Menlo Park laboratory by reciting the nursery rhyme, "Mary Had a Little Lamb." When he cranked the machine and played the audio back, he became the first person in history to hear their own true voice in real time, and his reaction was pure existential shock. He later wrote that he was never so taken aback in his entire life. The machine shop smelt like machine grease and kerosene as Edison accidentally introduced humanity to the horrifying realization that we do not sound the way we think we do. This phenomenon was so deeply unsettling that psychologists eventually had to give it a clinical name. In July of 1966, nearly a century after Edison's discovery, two psychoanalysts named Philip Holtzman and Clyde Rousey conducted a landmark experiment at the Menninger Foundation in Topeka, Kansas. They recorded dozens of subjects and essentially forced them to listen to the playback of their own voices. The researchers observed that the subjects did not just dislike the sound, they exhibited measurable physiological stress and deep psychological discomfort. Holtzman and Rousey officially diagnosed this universal cringe, coining the clinical term voice confrontation. They realized that the horror of hearing your own voice was not just a physical discrepancy between bone and air conduction, it was an identity crisis. If you love exploring the strange psychological quirks of being human, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a deep dive into the weird ways our brains work. What the researchers discovered was that our voices carry massive amounts of emotional information like anxiety, sadness, and hesitation that we successfully hide from ourselves in our heads, but which become painfully obvious when we hear them played back on a tape. But here is the ultimate twist, the perspective shift that completely changes how you should think about that cringy audio recording. When you hear a recording of yourself and think your voice sounds incredibly weird and annoying, you have the equation entirely backward. The voice on the recording is not the weird, distorted version. The voice on the recording is the real you. It is exactly how your friends, your family, and every stranger you have ever met hears you every single day. The weird, fake, distorted voice is actually the deep, resonant one playing inside your head. That pleasant, bass-heavy voice you love so much is a total hallucination, a biological lie constructed by the vibrating bones of your skull. You have spent your entire life believing in a version of yourself that simply does not exist in the physical world. The recording is not ruining your voice, it is exposing the truth. It is tearing down the acoustic filter your brain has been using to flatter you since the day you learned how to speak. It is the only time you ever hear who you actually are. This whole auditory illusion forces us to look at a much bigger, slightly uncomfortable question: how well do we actually know our own physical presence? If something as basic as the sound of your own voice is a biological lie, what else about your self-perception is just made up by your brain? Look at mirrors. You look at yourself every single day, but that image is flipped horizontally. You have never actually seen your own face the way the rest of the world sees it. You are essentially locked inside your own body, experiencing the entire universe from a deeply subjective, highly filtered, first-person perspective. This is why voice confrontation feels so jarring. It is one of the very few moments in your entire life where you are violently ripped out of your own head and forced to perceive yourself from the outside exactly as everyone else does. It shatters that comfortable illusion of the self we all carry around. Suddenly, you are standing face to face with the raw, unfiltered reality of who you are, stripped of the internal biological padding that usually protects your ego. It raises a tough question. If the version of you in your head is just a character you are playing, which version of you is the one that actually matters? But the biological weirdness doesn't stop with your perception, it gets even more physical than that. To make things even weirder, here are 3 rapid-fire facts about your voice. First, because of bone conduction, you can actually hear your own voice even if you plug both of your ears. Try it. You are hearing the sound through your jaw. Second, professional opera singers spend years training themselves to ignore the booming resonance inside their own skulls. They have to trust their technique because what they hear is totally different from what the audience hears. And third, deaf individuals who learn to speak can actually perceive the vibrations of their own vocal cords through their jawbones. They use that tactile feedback to modulate their pitch and volume without hearing a single note. Your skull is constantly vibrating with a symphony of internal frequencies that are invisible to the outside world. Your head is essentially a private concert hall where you are the only audience member who ever gets a ticket. And if you think that is strange, wait until you hear how this fake voice actually defines your social existence. So, the next time you hear a recording of your voice and instinctively cringe, take a deep breath and try to reframe the whole experience. That higher-pitched, slightly annoying voice coming out of your phone speaker is not an enemy. It is the voice that your friends associate with comfort and late-night laughs. It is the voice that your family associates with love and safety. It is the specific sound your dog listens for when you walk through the front door. This is the authentic, unvarnished sound of your actual existence in the physical universe. The deep cinematic radio announcer voice in your head might feel cooler, but it is ultimately a lonely illusion that only you can hear. The voice on the tape is the one that actually connects you to the rest of humanity. By finally accepting the cringe, you are doing something much bigger. You are finally accepting the real you, exactly as the world knows you. So, the next time you hear yourself, don't run away from the sound. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been genuinely embarrassed by a recording of your own voice? And what did you think you actually sounded like? I am curious if anyone actually likes their recorded voice, so let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this dive into the strange physics of the human skull, hit that subscribe button. We do deep dives like this into the weird science of everyday life all the time, and I would love to have you along for the next one. Remember, the voice in your head might be a lie, but it is a pretty fantastic one. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.